The Confidence Gap is a fantastic book which is based on acceptance and commitment therapy skills to help increase confidence. So in this book, Russ Harris gives us 10 rules to become more confident. And in this video, I'm going to give you an overview of each one to hopefully give you a really good starting point and perhaps a great way to start the new year heading into 2025. So no messing about, let's jump straight in. What exactly is the confidence gap, which is the title of this book? So Russ defines it as a place where people get lost. It's a place where people get stuck when fear and anxiety gets in the way. And you know you are in the gap as you say something similar to,
I can't achieve my goals, perform at my peak, do the things I want to do, or behave like the person I want to be until I feel more confident.
Hands up if you've ever thought that. If you've got your hand up right now, then yes, my friend, you have been in the confidence gap. And maybe you're still there. But let's see if we can give you some tools to get out of it. So before we get into the 10 rules, let's think of the reasons why people aren't confident. Russ outlines 5 reasons that people lack confidence. They have excessive expectations. So this can also often be referred to as perfectionism. What I do has to be perfect, otherwise I have failed myself. Or it has to be perfect, otherwise people will think it's not good enough and there's no point doing it. Harsh self-judgment. This is your mind beating you up. You're rubbish at this. Everyone will think you suck. You're going to fail. And this could also fall into the realm of imposter syndrome. Your mind tells you that you don't really know what you're doing. And if you expose yourself too much, you're going to get found out. And everyone will know you're an imposter. Thirdly, preoccupation with fear. This can be being afraid of things not working out for you, or maybe things going badly. Maybe you fear failing, or being embarrassed, or being rejected, or making mistakes in front of people. And that fear is uncomfortable. Fear brings with it certain thoughts and certain body sensations that you might not like and want to avoid. So you become fearful of feeling those things, which is what you feel when you feel fear. So you essentially become fearful of feeling fear. Fourth, a lack of experience. And this one seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? If you have little experience of something, then it's likely to feel uncomfortable as it's probably well outside of your comfort zone. If you've never talked in front of 100 people before, then it seems pretty obvious that most people aren't going to feel confident talking in front of 100 people. And fifth and finally, a lack of skills. We tend to feel confident about things that we are quite good at. Imagine you've, never ridden a horse before. Maybe you've never even been close to an actual real live horse. And I say, right, today, I'm going to teach you to ride a horse, but what we're going to do is you go and get on it, you get all ready, you bring the horse out to the front of the stables and I'll meet you down the beach with my horse. You might not feel confident as you have absolutely no idea what you are doing. Whereas if you've had horse riding lessons since you were a child, then you would probably feel a bit more confident about doing that. And if you already have the skills, for example, you can play the guitar, you can speak to people, then the low confidence probably comes from 1, 2, 3 or 4. Well, what happens if you don't have the skill? Well, then you're going to need to work on them. If you want to be good at something, you're gonna have to practice. Yes, I know there's some people who are just naturally talented at things and can just do it, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about you. So let's very quickly cover lack of skill. So Russ talks about this idea of the confidence cycle. So the first part of the cycle is you practice the skill you want to improve. We all know we have to practice to get good at something. It's common sense. Some people have natural ability, but they still need to practice to get even better. The difficulty is that even practice carries its own difficulties, such as frustration when progress is slow, or it's hard to find the time, or you're feeling tired when you try to do it after a long day at work. Maybe you have some of those critical thoughts or judgments going on through your mind, meaning that your practice isn't very effective. And the thing is, the rules about gaining confidence also apply to effective practice. Part 2 of the cycle is apply the skill effectively. We have to try and find times and ways to apply the skill, preferably outside of our comfort zone. For example, if we want to get better at public speaking, then I may practice a presentation in the comfort of my lounge on my own. But at some point, it would be useful to try it in front of perhaps some family members or some workmates. And again, judgments are going to come up whilst you are doing this. You might find you get distracted by thoughts and feelings that take your attention away from what you were trying to do, away from that practice. and that makes it even more difficult. Then the third stage is assess the results of your practice. After you've tried applying the skill effectively, we need to think about how it actually went and being honest with ourselves. What worked? What didn't work? What would be better to do differently next time? And it's really easy to say, it was all rubbish, I'm never doing that again, I'm useless, and really beat yourself up. But that's not helpful, is it? In pretty much every assessment of your own practice, you can find at least one thing that went okay, and find several things that you realise you can work on to get better. And then the fourth stage is to modify this as needed. Once you've made your assessment, modify what you need to. Do more of what's working well and change what isn't. And then feed that information back into step 1, which is to practice again. Let's get into the 10 rules of confidence. Rule 1. There's an example of Nelson Mandela in the book. In Mandela's autobiography, he reports feeling afraid during his years in prison. However, he knew if he wanted to inspire the people in prison and become a leader, he couldn't look afraid. Now, we know from previous videos I've made that we have very little control over feelings directly, and we also have little control about what our mind presents us with. But we do have some control over our behaviours. Mandela could control his facial expressions, he could control his body language and the way he talked to give an impression of not being afraid to those around him. And this worked for him. But here is the question that leads us to rule number 1. When Mandela was doing this, was this confidence as a feeling or was it confidence as an action? So the first rule is the actions of confidence come first, the feelings of confidence come later. If Mandela was in the confidence gap, if he had to feel confident before he could behave like the person he wanted to be, he might never have become such an inspirational leader. If you play the game of waiting for confidence to come before you do something, you could be waiting forever. Think about this. Confidence isn't a feeling you magically wake up with one day. It's something you build through action. Imagine learning to swim. If you waited until you felt 100% confident to jump into the water, you might never get in. Instead, what happens is you take small steps, you get your feet wet, you might hold on to the side, you spend further time away from the side, and little by little your confidence grows. And this is the same for most things. Taking action, even when it feels uncomfortable, creates confidence over time. As a real-world example for myself, I end up doing quite a few presentations to different groups of people. The first time I spoke in front of a group, my hands were shaking, my heart was racing. I felt like avoiding it, making an excuse of why I couldn't do it. But I had a value connected with it around helping others and sharing information. So I did it anyway. Was I confident? Hell no. No way. But I got through it, I survived, and the more times I did it, the less nervous I felt, and over time, my actions have built my confidence, not the other way round. Rule 2. Do confident people feel fear? Spoiler alert, yes they do. And that's rule 2. Confidence isn't about being fearless, it's about transforming your relationship with fear. In the book, Russ challenges a common myth that confidence means being free of fear. And why is this a myth? Because fear doesn't go away when you are doing something new or challenging. But genuine confidence comes from acting despite fear. And this might be going a little bit too far for you, a little bit out there, allowing fear to come along for the ride. Fear can be like a passenger in your car. You don't have to kick it out to drive forward. You just need to make sure it doesn't have control of the steering wheel. Instead of fighting fear or trying to push it away or ignore it, we can transform our relationship with it. This is where our acceptance skills from ACT come into play. Try acknowledging it. Say, hello fear, I see you. Let it be there. You don't have to push it away. Maybe take a breath to anchor yourself in the moment. Focus on your actions. Do what matters in line with your values, even if fear is present. Personally, I do this all the time. Giving presentations, job interviews, university course interviews, and pretty much everything that I do that is new or meaningful to me, there is some element of fear. So rule 2, genuine confidence is not the absence of fear, it is a transformed relationship with fear. Rule 3, look at how good your mind is at completing sentences. This is an exercise from Stephen Hayes. I'm going to put some sentences on the screen and see if any words come to your mind without much effort. So not purposely thinking about the answers and trying to get it right, just see what naturally pops up for you. Children should be seen and not. Mary had a little. Every cloud has a. There's plenty more fishing. So you might have finished some of those sentences, and dependent on your own social and cultural context, with heard, lamb, silver lining, and the sea. And think about, do you really believe those things? Do you really believe that children should be seen and not heard? And now let's see if you could forget these words. Could you somehow delete the phrases so that when you hear the first part, you don't automatically think of the second part? I don't think you can. Once you know something, there is no psychological process to forget something outside of brain surgery or using substances. As Stephen Hayes jokingly says, a frontal lobotomy or a bottom in front of me. That's the only way to delete something. So what pops into your mind when you have thoughts about stepping outside of your comfort zone? You can see how your brain can complete these sentences for you. If I talk in front of people, if I go for that job interview, if I speak to that person at the party, is your mind completing that sentence? I've talked at length on this channel about how it is virtually impossible to stop negative thoughts. They are part of the human experience, and if you do try and suppress them or eliminate them, then they actually end up coming back stronger. It's called the rebound effect. So fighting them isn't the answer. Rule 3, negative thoughts are normal. Don't fight them, diffuse them. Similar to fear, instead of battling our negative thoughts, we can learn to change our relationship with them. Diffusion is about creating some space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to observe them, to notice you are having those thoughts without getting all tangled up in them. Being able to do this helps to reduce their influence over your actions. I have a whole playlist on cognitive diffusion on the channel, but one quick example is labeling your thoughts. Let's go back to my example of giving presentations, because this is at the forefront of my mind at the moment because I'm being asked to present a lot currently. So quite often I have the thought, I'm going to mess up. And when I say that, or I think that, I can feel the physical symptoms of it. I can feel it guiding my behavior toward avoidance, toward how can I get out of having to give this presentation? If I say or think I'm going to mess up for about 30 seconds, I can get really tangled up in it. It can really affect me. But if I label this as a thought and say, I'm having the thought that I'm going to mess up, if I do that for 30 seconds, it feels a little less intense for me. Then if I go one stage further and say, I notice I am having the thought that I'm going to mess up, it feels even less intense, like it's got less grip on me. It's like the thought is still there, but it has less sting to it, and hence less chance of getting in the way of action. So rule 4, the good old self-esteem myth. True or false? Boosting your self-esteem will improve your performance. People with high self-esteem are more likable, have better relationships, and make a better impression on others. People with high self-esteem make better leaders. Well, once people started looking past what was being declared by the self-esteem industry, which makes a packet, by the way, and actually looked at the research, they found that all 3 of those statements are false. What more, they also found that high self-esteem correlates with egotism, narcissism, and arrogance. High self-esteem correlates with prejudice and discrimination. High self-esteem correlates with self-deception and defensiveness when faced with honest feedback. That's a bit awkward. So what's the alternative? Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance offers you a far more consistent foundation for confidence. When we step outside our comfort zones, when we try something new, when we try something for the first time, let's face it, there's a chance, and it can be quite a high chance sometimes, that we're going to mess it up. It might not even be as a result of our actions, just something might unexpectedly happen that you couldn't account for. And when that does, I'm not even going to say if, because at some point, something will happen. How are you going to deal with it? Most people's default setting is to beat themselves up over it. Why did you do that? Why didn't you prepare for that? You're such an idiot. Knew you couldn't do it. What a loser. And think about your own experience. How many times have you done that? How many times have you beaten yourself up? And if that was a good way to become better by beating yourself up, surely you would be amazing by now with all the ass kickings you've given yourself. But it doesn't work, does it? In self-acceptance, we pay attention to what's happened. We pay attention to our actions. We try and let go of the blanket self-judgments that follow. If I mess up the presentation because I decided not to practice it and go to the pub with my mates instead, then yes, I'm probably to blame for it going wrong. But having the blanket self-judgment of I'm a bad person or I'm not good enough isn't helpful. Beating myself up isn't helpful. Now look, I get this is easier said than done, isn't it? Just let go of your self-judgments. Of course it's hard. You've been self-judging for like ever. Some things that can help with this are things like mindful awareness, learning to check in with your thoughts and your feelings. See if you can observe them for what they are and be curious about them rather than judging them. Some compassionate self-talk might be helpful. How would you respond to a close friend who came to you with what they have done? Would you criticize them? Would you berate them? Would you beat them metaphorically up? Probably not. So why would you do the same to yourself? So rule 4, self-acceptance trumps self-esteem. Rule 5, true success is living by your values. Success isn't solely about achieving specific goals or outcomes. It's about consistently living in alignment with your values. And if you haven't watched any of my values videos that include the difference between values and goals, well, values are the guiding principles, a bit like a compass, that reflect what is most important to you. Things such as honesty, things like compassion, things like creativity. You can't complete any of those things, they're just there as a guide. Think about goals being a destination you aim to reach, whereas values represent the direction you wish to travel in. So how are values related to confidence? Well, usually when people think of being confident, it is usually in pursuit of some sort of goal. And that makes sense. That is the behavioural outcome of having more confidence. But clarifying values is helpful because 1, they give us the inspiration and motivation to persist, even when things get difficult with both internal and external factors. And 2, values give us guidance and direction, as we said earlier. And 3, acting in accordance with your values, you tend to experience a sense of fulfillment as you move towards your goal. By following the compass in the direction of your values, you ensure your journey is meaningful. So how can we do this? Well, there's loads of values exercises on the channel, but a quick overview would be to firstly identify your values. You can either do this by using one of the exercises in my values playlist, or if you search online for values lists, you'll find loads. The problem I find with values lists is you tend to like the sound of them when you read them out, but that's because they are things that you think you should be like, not how you actually want to be. So be cautious with lists. If you get Russ's book that this video is based on, The Confidence Gap, then he has ways of establishing values in there, which is worth checking out. Then once you have identified some values, you can try and set value-based intentions. So for example, if you value learning, see if you can set an intention to spend some time each day acquiring some new knowledge. Either say by reading about something or watching a video about something or doing something to learn something new. Or if you find yourself in a situation where you are asking what to do, say you've had an argument with someone and you're thinking about how to handle the situation, asking yourself what sort of person you want to be can be really helpful. So what kind of dad do I want to be right now? So let's say I've had an argument with my daughter. I can ask myself, what kind of dad do I really want to be right now? What sort of husband, wife, friend, work colleague do I want to be? How do I want to show up? That usually gives you a value and then you can try and act in line with that. However, there can be a catch with values, and that is rule number 6. Rule number 6, hold your values lightly but pursue them vigorously. Rigid attachment to values can lead to inflexibility and more stress. Approaching values with openness allows you to adapt them to what is, let's face it, a very complex life. In a YouTube Shorts video I made, I compared values to a globe. Because of the shape of a globe, there will be times when some of your values will be at the back and you can't see them. It doesn't mean they don't exist anymore. They just aren't in your focus right now and might not be a priority for you right now. I love making YouTube videos. It sits well with my value of wanting to share information with others and making that information accessible. And when I'm sat in my office and I'm thinking about what video to make next, and I have 1,000 directions I could go in, and the voice starts showing up, it doesn't matter what you make, it will be crap. And I start getting that unpleasant feeling, then it's my value that allows me to accept those feelings. It's my motivating factor. But when I'm playing with my kids, connecting with another value around them, I'm not focusing on what video I'm going to make next. It's not a priority in that moment. The value of being there for my kids is the priority, so I can shift between the two when required. If I'm with the kids and I think that my value in that moment is sharing information on YouTube, then I'm not going to be engaged with the kids, and that then creates a bit of a problem for me. Rule 7, Don't obsess about the outcome, get passionate about the process. This principle encourages us to shift our focus from fixating on results to fully engaging in the actions and experiences that lead us there. Russ talks about two mountain climbers. One climber, climber A, is completely outcome focused, and the other climber, climber B, is more values focused. And they both start to climb the same mountain. Climber A starts racing up the mountain as fast as they can. All they can think about is getting to the top, not wanting to waste a second focusing on anything else. They won't be fulfilled until they are at the very top. Climber B starts going up the mountain but appreciates things more in the moment. How they are improving their skills, what the scenery looks like, and all the different wildlife that is around them and how that changes the further that they go up. Noticing how their body feels and how much easier or more difficult that they are finding it than last time, with a sense of curiosity. Unfortunately, the weather comes in and neither can make it to the top. They have to stop and turn around. Both of them have failed to achieve their goal. Now, I'm not going to say that one climber was disappointed and the other one was not, because that's completely unrealistic. Often people say it's about the journey, not the destination, but the destination is still important, it still matters. But climber B handles the disappointment better. The 1/3 or 2/3 of the climb completed was fulfilling to them. They got to do so much. They developed some new skills. They saw some different types of wildlife. They got to experience a beautiful view. So it was still a rewarding time, despite not making it to the very top. Climber A, however, regards the trip as a complete failure and really beats himself about not getting to the top, despite the fact the outcome had little to do with their ability, but more to do with something that was somewhat outside of their control. This is the difference between a goal-focused life and a values-focused life. Rule 8, we had the self-esteem trap earlier. Well, we now have the fear trap. Rule 8 is, don't fight your fear, allow it, befriend it and channel it. Fear is a normal human emotion that arises in challenging or uncertain situations where you may feel unsafe or threatened. It's not difficult to realise that this is an emotion that not people actually enjoy, so it makes sense that we would try to avoid it. We might distract ourselves, we might quit, we might avoid people or places, we might use thinking strategies to try and think our way out of them. We might turn to substances to help. So this is a bit of a conundrum. When we move outside of our comfort zone, it is by definition uncomfortable. And we don't like those feelings of discomfort, so we find ways to alleviate them. And that often takes us back to where we started because we've used avoidance. Or we've ended up making things even worse, which is often the case if we use substances. So what's the alternative? Well, same as always, acceptance. Russ refers to research from Rich and Woolever, who showed that during academic tests, most people have similar amounts of anxiety. What determines their result is not the actual level of their anxiety, such as those with less anxiety do better than those with more anxiety. But what's important is how much they can engage in the exam despite having those feelings. The people who did not let themselves get distracted by their thoughts and feelings and could turn their attention to the exam did far better. So it's not about reducing anxiety, it's about getting better at letting it be there whilst turning your attention to the thing that matters. And again, there's loads of ways we can do this. A quick one as an example is using the name skill. Notice, acknowledge, make space, expand awareness. You'll see this is quite similar to my dropping anchor video that's on the channel. It's essentially the same skill, it's just a different way to frame it. Notice the thoughts and feelings are there. Where in your body, where are they showing up and what that feels like. Acknowledge the feeling. Oh, here it is, here's anxiety. Oh, that's right, I'm doing this exam, that's really important to me, so it would make sense that I'd feel some anxiety about it. Make room for it by taking a nice deep breath. Let it in. See if we can give the fear a bit of space and then expand our awareness so we aren't just acknowledging the fear, but also that we have something in front of us important that needs our attention. So we're acknowledging both of those things. Check out my dropping anchor video if you want a more in-depth step-by-step guide for this. But remember, fear isn't out to get you. It's there to help you manage difficult situations and to alert you to the fact that there's a potential threat here or some sort of risk. If we didn't have fear, we would be doing stupid stuff all of the time and getting injured, or we'd be hurting others. But we can take those feelings as information to use about the situation that we're in. It's giving us a message. Fear can also be helpful. It can help us focus. It can help keep us alert. It can make us stronger. Use those skills. Use the skills fear gives us to our advantage by channeling it into our value. And rule 9, you're going to fail something at some point. I said it, not very motivational, is it? And you know what? It's probably going to hurt. It's going to really suck, and it's going to bring a load of discomfort and pain with it. So it makes sense to protect yourself from that by not trying to do the thing you failed at in the first place. If you don't try to do the thing, you can't fail, and you can't feel all the things that comes with failing. But rule 9 tells us that failure hurts. But if we're willing to learn, it's a wonderful teacher. Sometimes we fail because we have a skills deficit that we didn't realize was a deficit until we tried it. Sometimes we fail because of something outside of our control, like our climbers earlier. But we cannot let failure stop us from ever trying again. So here are 6 quick steps to make a comeback. 1. Don't get caught up in the stuff your mind is going to give you, those self-judgments. That criticism, you're such a loser, knew you would fail. Apply diffusion skills we discussed earlier. 2. Make room. Oh yeah, this one again. Hold the pain gently, acknowledge it's there, make room for it. 3. Be kind. What would you say to a friend who had just been through the same thing? Beating yourself up isn't going to get you where you want to go. Otherwise, you would have been there ages ago with all the beating up of yourself you probably do. 4. Think about what you did and identify what did work. This is a learning opportunity. What didn't go bad, no matter how small? What went okay and what went well? This isn't about forgetting about the experience. This isn't about making room for all the difficult stuff so you feel better. It's about learning and improving. So what went well? 5, similar to 4, is there anything useful in this failure? What have you learned from it? Maybe you even learned that the failure didn't hurt you as much as you thought it would, and you coped better than you thought with it. Maybe it hurt even more than you thought it would, and you still coped. Maybe you learned a bit of a new skill. Maybe you learned that there's a new skill that needs to be learned. There will be something in every failure that you can take away as a learning opportunity. And 6, think about what sort of person you want to be right now. Do you want to be the person that's going to give up? Or do you want to be the person to stand up and try again to do something more life enhancing? Think about your values from earlier. What's coming up value-wise when you think about the task you failed at? How does that make you answer? What sort of person do you want to be right now? Maybe try a temporal shift. What is 5-year future me gonna want from the present me right now? And finally, rule 10. Ever heard of being in a flow state or being in the zone? Maybe you've even experienced it for yourself, where it feels like you are completely absorbed in the task. You have almost become one with the task. There's no internal dialogue, there's no self-consciousness, there's no attention on the past or the future. There is just now. Everything is about the task happening right here, right now, and you perform it amazingly. This gives us rule number 10. The key to peak performance is total engagement in the task. And Russ speaks of 3 phases: a pre-performance phase, where we prepare through training and practice skills; a performance phase, where the training and practice comes together into the actual task. We have no distractions in our minds. We have space from our difficult thoughts and feelings despite them showing up. And if we can do those things well, we increase the chance of getting into flow state. And then we have a post-performance response phase where we reflect on how we did and how we can learn and grow from it. What worked, what didn't work, what could we do differently next time? And there we have it. 10 rules for you to think about when it comes to being more confident. The actions of the confidence come first. The feelings of confidence come later. Genuine confidence is not the absence of fear, it's a transformed relationship with fear. Negative thoughts are normal. Don't fight them, diffuse them. Self-acceptance trumps self-esteem. True success is living by your values. Hold your values lightly, but pursue them vigorously. Don't obsess about the outcome, get passionate about the process. Don't fight your fear, allow it, befriend it, and channel it. Failure hurts, but if we are willing to learn, it's a wonderful teacher. The key to peak performance is total engagement in the task. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. 10 rules from Russ's Confidence Gap. It's a great book. There's loads of extra information in there that obviously I haven't covered because I don't want to just duplicate the entire book in video format. So I highly recommend checking Russ's book out. He's got a load of other books as well, all around acceptance and commitment therapy. He's very, very good at making information accessible. So if you want something that's easily accessible, I would definitely check out his work. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this was helpful. Take care. Goodbye.